In this video, I'm gonna show you how I live for almost free in this fourplex and how you can do the exact same thing. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna show you just how much money I made and how life-changing this investment really was, so stay tuned. My name is Eric Stewart, and I made this channel to share my experience with you and to show you that anyone can create financial freedom through real estate investing. If you're new here, introduce yourself in the comments and ask any questions you have. I reply to everyone who's in the comments. This property is not going to sound like much, but stick with me because as the story goes on, you will see that big things really can have small beginnings.
Big things have small beginnings.
So I found this deal on Craigslist of all places. I found it just looking around online one day and it popped up. I looked at the pictures, called the owner. So I came in, I offered basically full price and I got it. So my main goal when buying this place was basically, can I live for free? I asked myself that question. So I went home, analyzed the numbers and determined that I would in fact be able to live for free in one of these units while renting out the other three. This method of investing is called house hacking. I'll show you how I analyze those numbers later, but for now, back to the story. After determining if you can live for free, then the next goal is to figure out how little money can I put into buying this and acquiring and controlling the property. Another great thing about house hacking is that you can actually use a loan with a low down payment of 3 or 3.5% down. So very little money out of pocket, and that's awesome. I bought this house with a FHA loan, 3.5% down, and in this particular case, I actually used a line of credit from a previous property to pay the down payment on this property. So you might be saying,
that's great for you, Eric.
I don't have a house I can just pull money from, and that's totally fine. Since you'd be living in the property, you'd only have to save up enough for the minimum down payment, which can be as low as 3 or 3.5%. Even if you started with absolutely $0 in your bank account and had to start setting aside 20% of your paycheck every month, I guarantee that most of you could have enough for down payment in less than 3 years. If you make 35 grand a year and would take home about $29,750 after taxes, if you save 20% of that a year, that's about 6 grand, which is about $18,000 over those 3 years, which means that most of you could start living for free in less than 3 years. Now let's get into how I manage the property. So after I moved in and was starting to manage it and getting comfortable, of course, immediately someone missed their first rent payment, and it's everyone's worry that what if they don't pay rent? And so I was kind of prepared from the research I've done, listening to Bigger Pockets, reading books, but it's always interesting when it happens to you for the first time and it's not just a theory. So essentially I just said, if you can't pay your rent, I'm gonna have to find someone else to live in your unit because I need someone paying rent. And I did give him more time and I was lenient, but as the weeks went on and the months went on, it just was clear he wasn't going to be paying rent. So I just asked him to leave. I didn't want to have to evict him. So I'm like, I don't want to have to evict you. I don't want to go through all that. So would you just be willing to find a new place to live? And he said yes. And so actually it was a lot easier than I thought. It was way less scary than I thought. And the next tenant I found was actually really great. So if you don't have a whole phone full of contractors, like a great plumber, a great electrician, all these people that'll help you in case one little thing goes wrong, that's not a big deal because you'll figure it out. Like you'll find someone. If you have a huge plumbing emergency, which you probably won't, but it's possible, you'll figure it out. You'll find a plumber and you have time to look around and shop around before anything goes wrong. So really the best advice is if you want a house hack, if you want to live for free, just jump in, start taking the first few steps because the big fears of
what if I don't have a contractor? What if someone doesn't pay rent?
They don't usually come to reality. I bought this property 5 years ago. Back then I was doing a lot more stuff myself, a lot of maintenance, repairs. I'm pretty handy, so I just did anything I needed to do to save some money. I mowed the lawn, I did the snow removal, all that stuff, and it's great for saving money. But after I moved out, I didn't want to keep coming over here to do the lawn and snow, way less convenient, so I did hire it out, which kind of cut into the cash flow a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind. When you live here, when you move in, you'll be doing a lot of that stuff yourself if you decide to, but when you move out, make sure you still have enough room with the cash flow and the numbers to cover those expenses that you will no longer be wanting to do. So now let's get into the in-depth financials on this property. We can go over what I paid for it, what it was like when I lived here, and then after I moved out, and then ultimately after I sold it, what the proceeds were from that sale. So let me show you what the numbers look like. And if you're not a numbers person, don't worry, because neither am I. And if I can figure it out, anyone can figure it out. I agreed to the purchase price of $260,000 using an FHA loan with a 3.5% down payment, which was $9,100. Loan costs, prepaids came to about $3,000. So for a grand total of about $12,100, we could purchase a $260,000 income producing asset. That alone is a game changer. I wish I could do that 100 times, but unfortunately, you can only have one, maybe two FHAs at the same time. After closing on the fourplex, my starting principal balance was $250,900. I had an interest rate of 4% on a 30-year loan, so my monthly payment was $1,738. This includes principal, interest, insurance, taxes for the property, and mortgage insurance. We moved into one of the units, and the other 3 units rented out for $500, $600, and $650. The laundry machines also made about $80 a month, which brought our grand total to, wait for it, $92 positive cash flow. That's before any expenses anyway. My wife and I had to pay for utilities for our own unit, which was about $75 a month, and we also had to pay for the common area for the fourplex, which was about $200 a month. So between my wife and I, we paid $183 a month to live in that apartment. So I was super happy with this. Of course, there are people out there who have done an insanely good job with the same setup, where they are actually getting paid hundreds or even thousands of dollars to live in a fourplex or a duplex, by maybe finding a better deal in the first place, or by using the other 3 units as short-term furnished rentals. But there's also ways to do way worse. So to live for free or very close to it, I was satisfied with those results. My main concerns at that point were 4 things. First, keeping low vacancy. Second, keeping expenses really low. Third is setting up systems to make property management easier. And the 4th thing was hoping that nothing big went wrong. So at this point, you might be thinking, why was this a life-changing investment? Well, the short answer is because it was a catalyst to the rest of my investing career. Let me show you how much this one decision to buy this one fourplex changed the trajectory of my life, and how doing the same thing could change yours too. When I purchased this fourplex, I had only ever purchased 2 other properties up to this point in my life. And one of those was almost a complete fail. Comment below if you'd like to see a video on that. So I consider this fourplex to be my first real investment property. In the 5 years after buying this property, I have done 6 flips, 5 burrs, 2 rental property purchases, and a wholesale deal. I'm also currently under contract to purchase a 36-unit apartment building. And now looking back, this is when so many paradigm shifts happened in my life. I wanted the lifestyle and the financial security described by so many successful investors on the Bigger Pockets podcast and in the books I was reading. Hearing their stories and understanding what I would need to do to have similar results was all I needed. At that point, I was hooked and committed to the long-term goal of financial freedom. I wanted to become a professional real estate investor. I had already done the hardest step, which was getting your first deal. So that's what I want for everyone watching my videos. Check out my channel, get a good idea of the foundation and knowledge and real estate stories from an actual person doing it, and hopefully you can get your first deal soon. Then make an educated decision. Decide, do I even want to be a real estate investor? Or how much further to take my current real estate portfolio? Ask yourself what skills you can utilize or learn to leverage in real estate. And lastly, what niche do you want to specialize in? When you really commit to learning real estate investing, it can completely change your life. I'll make another video about what kind of mindset you'll need to develop as a real estate investor, but I should stress the importance of the psychological aspect here. When I was learning real estate, everything I was reading, watching turned into belief and then finally turned into reality. This deal made me truly believe that I was a real estate investor. Were there days I had imposter syndrome? Lots of them. Were there days it sucked? Yes. Did I get impatient or frustrated? Like all the time. Were there times I thought about quitting? Not really, because I'm actually super stubborn. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm capable of accomplishing this goal, then I could do everything else I learned on Bigger Pockets as well. Of course, this deal didn't make me a millionaire or anything, but it gave me a huge push towards financial freedom and a lot of confidence, which is arguably way more important. Don't underestimate a good balance of education, planning, and action taking. Now let me show you the actual numbers and the profit I made on this property after selling it 5 years later. So I sold this property for $315,000. Subtract closing costs, property taxes, loan payoff, and the proceeds from the sale were $78,843. To see my net proceeds, I'll subtract my initial down payment of $9,100, and after everything, my profit is $69,743. I want you guys to really understand how much this could benefit you. You don't need previous experience, you don't need to have a ton of money, and you don't need to know exactly what you're doing before you get started. I made $69,743 just by buying a property for full price and living in it for less than 2 of the 5 years I owned it. So let's look at this another way. I received 7.6 times my initial investment after selling. If I divide that total profit across those 5 years I owned it, I made about $13,948 per year in profit for each of the 5 years. So let's take my annual profit and divide it by my initial investment to see what my annual ROI is. $13,948 per year divided by my initial investment of $9,100, and it comes out to be 153%. Essentially, this investment produced an average return of 153% every year for 5 years on my initial $9,100 investment. That's insane. For some perspective, the stock market returns are 7 to 10% annually on average. Many investors I know are happy with a 10 to 15% ROI. So 153 is bonkers. There are a few caveats to this, like this investment was not passive. I saved money by doing DIY, maintenance, and management. I also calculated total ROI, but you could also calculate the ROI a few different ways, cash on cash, pre-tax, post-tax, but we can cover all that in a separate video, but for now I just want to focus on the big picture that this was a super good investment. So let me know in the comments if you think this is a life-changing investment or not a life-changing investment, and why. If you're like me, hearing a story like this is super motivating. Knowing that such a small thing can have a massive impact on your life is a game changer. The barrier for entry is pretty low, the risk is pretty low, and with a little planning, this strategy is available to almost everyone. With this blueprint, hopefully you can have a couple more valuable tools now in your tool belt and get you one step closer to financial freedom. So let's recap the tools you learned in this video. Number 1, introduction to house hacking concept. Number 2, introduction to Bigger Pockets podcast as a huge source for learning real estate. Number 3, that your first investment is usually the most important one because it gets you started. And 4, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to see more videos like this. You'll find everything you need to take action and find financial freedom through real estate. The like button tells YouTube I'm doing a good job, and the bell icon will give you a heads up the next time my video is released. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and we'll see you on the next video.